Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the life of a true musical giant, a name that's pretty much the definition of genius, Ludwig van Beethoven. When we think of Beethoven, we picture this towering figure of classical music, right? But his most profound story, the one that really gets you, isn't just about his symphonies. It's about an intense, almost unimaginable human struggle. Yeah, this is the image most of us have in our heads, right? That intense gaze, the wild hair, a titan of music completely lost in a world of sound that he's creating. But as you can probably guess, the reality was so much more complicated than any portrait could ever show. And that really brings us to the central, mind-bending question of his entire life. It's a paradox that's fascinated people for centuries. I mean, how does a musician, someone whose whole world is sound, compose their most revolutionary work when they can no longer hear it? So, to really grasp just how massive his triumph over that silence was, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to see the incredible promise he started with, because believe me, the world expected big things from him right from the start. Okay, so he was born here, in Bonn, Germany, back in 1770. And his musical talent, it was obvious from day one. I mean, a total prodigy. But his childhood, well, it was anything but easy. His father, who was also a musician, knew he had a genius on his hands and pushed him relentlessly with this harsh, super intensive training that honestly often just left the poor kid in tears. So at 21, he makes the big move to Vienna, which was the musical capital of the world back then. And get this, his patron, a guy named Count Waldstein, lays out this incredible expectation. He's basically saying, you're not just going to study, you are going to Vienna to become the next Mozart. I mean, talk about pressure, right? Receive Mozart's spirit from Haydn's hands. Wow. Okay, so music historians usually split his career into these three distinct periods. You've got the early, the middle, and the late. But look at this timeline. Looming over all of it, like this tragic shadow, is the slow, relentless decline of his hearing. And the cruelest part, it started right as his career was exploding. So imagine this. You're Beethoven. You're the talk of Vienna, the most exciting young composer around. Your career is taking off like a rocket. And then, bam, you're confronted with the one single thing that a musician fears more than anything else in the world. It didn't just happen all at once. When he was in his late 20s, it started as this tormenting, nonstop buzzing and ringing in his ears. We'd call it severe tinnitus today, but for him, it was this terrifying preview of the complete silence that was on its way. And for years, he kept it a secret. He was absolutely terrified it would end his career. So he started avoiding people, staying away from social events, and he got this reputation for being kind of standoffish and cranky. But then in 1806, he makes this incredibly powerful decision. He decides, you know what? No more hiding. He's not just going to live with it. He's going to let it become part of his art. But getting to that point, man, it was rough. Before that resolution, there was just absolute despair. In 1802, he hits rock bottom. He's in a town called Heiligenstadt, and he writes this letter to his brothers. We call it the Heiligenstadt Testament now, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. He basically confesses that he's thought about ending his own life. And this is the crucial part, he decides he can't. He says he has to stay for his art. He chose to live for his music. And coming out of that dark place, out of that abyss of despair, Beethoven didn't just walk out. He came out swinging. He started pouring all of that struggle, all of that raw defiance against fate, directly into his music. And in doing that, he created something totally new, totally revolutionary. I mean, this quote right here, it says it all, doesn't it? I will seize fate by the throat. This is not a guy who's just going to accept his situation. This is a declaration of war. And that pure, raw defiance, that became the engine for this whole new, powerful chapter of his music. And if you want a perfect picture of that spirit, look no further. He wrote this absolutely groundbreaking Third Symphony, the Aurora, and he dedicated it to Napoleon Bonaparte, who he saw as this great hero for the people. But then, Napoleon goes and declares himself emperor. And Beethoven, he flew into a complete rage, took the title page, and just furiously scratched Napoleon's name right off of it. That single act of scratching out a name basically kicks off what we now call his heroic period. His music just gets bigger, more dramatic, It's filled with this raw emotional power that nobody had ever heard before. He was tackling these huge themes of struggle, heroism, and ultimately triumph over it all. And think about this. While his hearing is actively getting worse, he's writing some of the most powerful music in history. I mean, the Fifth Symphony, you know the one, da 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 dum. That famous opening is supposed to be fate knocking at the door. It's literally the sound of a battle against adversity. So we move into his final years. By this point, he is almost completely deaf. And his music? It changes. It takes this incredible journey inward. It's less about the big, heroic struggle with the outside world, and more about this profound, almost spiritual kind of expression that, honestly, very few composers have ever touched. He was basically cut off from the world by this wall of silence. His only way to have a conversation was to have people write down what they wanted to say in these little notebooks. Can you imagine? It's in that state, in that profound isolation, that he creates his most jaw-dropping, transcendent music. Yeah, in this last unbelievable burst of creativity, he writes the deeply spiritual Missa Solemnis, and, of course, his monumental Ninth Symphony, the one that ends with the Ode to Joy, which has become this universal anthem of hope for all of humanity. The first performance of that Ninth Symphony back in 1824 was his last great public triumph. But it was also this moment of, well, it's almost heartbreakingly poignant. It's a moment that showed everyone just how deep his isolation really was. So, the symphony ends, and the audience just erupts, thunderous, ecstatic applause. But Beethoven, who'd been on stage conducted, just stays there, facing the orchestra, completely lost in the score that's playing in his head. He had no idea what was happening behind him until one of the singers gently, took his arm and turned him around to face the crowd so he could at least see the ovation he couldn't hear. So what do we take from all this? Beethoven's life really shows us that art that's born from the deepest, darkest suffering can actually give us this incredible message of hope, of resilience, of pure joy that goes way beyond the limits of just hearing. He didn't just compose in spite of his deafness. In a really profound way, he composed because of it. He was forced to create a sound that came entirely, purely from within.